I'm excited to be headed to San Diego on November 4th and 5th this year for the ERE Recruiting Innovation Summit. This event always brings together the best in talent acquisition, recruiting leaders, HR executives, HR tech, people that are really shaping where this industry is going. It's more than just a pitch fest. I mean, this is where actual learning comes in. They've been around for 30 years. It's a great event at San Diego in November. And you're going to have some excellent speakers, demonstrations. We have pin.com there. Joel Loudry will be there. You'll have the team from ERE there, Jim Stroud. These are people that have been shaping the industry this decade and really where it's going in terms of AI and the blend with AI and recruiters and all that good stuff. I went in April this year and it was a transformative experience. We had a great time with Digital Recruiter booth and speaking and just people learning about automation and content and AI tools. It was just really cool event. So I'll be an official content partner representing Digital Recruiter. So we're going to be capturing videos, doing man on the street, interviewing the speakers, the sponsors, really getting a pulse on the action. So if you're in talent acquisition, if you're agency recruiter, this is the place to be on November 4th and 5th. Go meet your peers in person, learn from them. There's virtual tickets, there's in-person events. It's an awesome time. And so please enjoy our ERE podcast series so it gets you a glimpse of all the people that are going to be at ERE, and we'd love to see you there. All right. Welcome to another episode of the ERE Recruiting Innovation Summit podcast series. I'm your host, Clark Wilcox, founder of Digital Recruiter, and I have a very special guest. The man has done 1,500 podcasts. You know him, the most known podcast in the recruiting HR industry. And I say that because I just started mine a couple years ago. They've done way more than I have, way bigger reach than I have. And so he's on the other side of the coin now as a guest. Chad and Cheese podcast. He's the cheese part of it, Joel Cheesman. Thanks for being here, man.
Clark, appreciate it, man. Yeah, I am the younger, taller, hairier half of the Chad and Cheese podcast. If your listeners don't know it, it's been best described as TMZ meets TechCrunch with a sports talk attitude that's industry focused. So yeah, I'm kind of a big deal, Clark. I hope you're not too nervous.
I know it's the Ron Burgundy of the HR recruiting world. So I'm
right.
It's an honor, right? I'm just the up and coming young start or whatever. Not that young, but
that's right. Be lucky you're getting me from the waist up. Otherwise, it might be a totally different podcast.
Well, that's all right. Well, we could compare dad bods in San Diego. I'm just kidding. I'll start there because I don't know the answer. What inspired you and Chad to start the podcast back in 2017?
17, yeah. I mean, I won't get too deep in the history, but I've been around a while. I had a blog called Cheesehead back in the day that a few of your listeners might know about. And in the mid-aughts, if you wanted to do a podcast, which they actually did exist, it was generally a little piece of embed code if you put audio on a file. And then you would put that embed code on a blog post and then hope that people would, on their desktop, click play and they hope they had speakers that they could listen to it. So back when I did a blog, Chad and I were friends and we met up. We kind of bonded over Ohio State Buckeyes football and some other things. And we just threw out a couple blog posts. Well, our lives sort of diverged around 2008 or 9. Life got us back together. And he said, you know, that thing we did with the podcasting, it feels like it's the right time. Podcasts are kind of blowing up. Maybe we should do it again. And my then girlfriend, now wife, said, yeah, it'd be a good idea to get off the couch and do something with yourself. So I said, look, we have to have a certain amount of people that want it, a certain, at least one person that'll write a check to sponsor this thing. And I'll give it a year's commitment. And lo and behold, 100 plus people said, yeah, we want it. And someone wrote a check for it. And 7-8 years later, here we are 8 years later and over 1,500 episodes.
I love it. And in the one thing, I think one of the stats of podcasts is most of them people don't go past 6 episodes or whatever. They do something or they give up. I don't know if that's a real stat or not, but it's a lot of start and never really continue with it. What was, you mentioned kind of took a year. What was the turning point where you felt like you guys were recording, putting stuff out there and kind of took the leap? In terms of kind of viewers and got to like that next level and feeling fairly established?
Yeah, I mean, to your point of a lot of people, it's kind of like blogging back in the day. Everyone has like 4 or 5 blog posts in them. Like, I feel really strongly about A, B, and C, and I
Yeah,
want to tell the world about it. And then they get to, the sixth post and say, well, I don't have anything else to say. So I did have that going in, and we've been good about the show being about what's happening in the news, what's going. So there's always something to talk about. I
yeah,
find that if your podcast is about, I don't know, employment branding or like a certain niche of the industry, you do kind of run out of stuff because there's not a lot of news around a certain vertical in our space. So we keep it specialized to our space, but also broad enough that there's always something news going on. And I was actually worried when we started if we would have enough stuff to talk about. We have more than enough stuff to talk about. Everyone, startups are getting money, people are getting acquired. LinkedIn and Indeed are always doing something like so. There's always something to talk about. Um, and then the next part of your question, I think, was sort of like what was the inspiration to keep it going. I mean, I've always been of the mindset that if it doesn't make money, then it don't make sense.
yeah,
And I think from the outset, Chad and I have always had the mentality that it's a business. It's not just a hobby or something to have fun with. And I think too many people start a podcast or a blog and don't really ask what's the mission, like why am I doing this?
yeah.
And which is odd because we're in HR, which everything is like, what's your why? Why do you do stuff?
Yeah.
But people start podcasts and don't say, why am I doing this? And if you don't have that why, that mission statement, if you will, you're going to have a hard time keeping things going. And we've
That's,
always had sort of that mission.
I, I I like it. I resonate as someone that's coached a lot of recruiters, a lot of agency recruiters, people that want to get into the industry with COVID and working remote. People looked at what jobs can make money and I can be at my computer. Recruiting was one, or agency recruiting was one. And so when I asked the question, well, why are you doing this? Well, I heard you can make money. It's like, all right, like go get the reps, go figure it out, and like good luck. But this is going to be a little bit different. Like there needs to be some purpose because this is a grind. This industry is a grind, and if it's got to be more than just filling seats or placing people in jobs. I mean, a good agency recruiter can make what 30, 40 placements in a year. That's 300
Yeah.
days where you're not getting a W, right? And podcasts, right, they can be even less like metrics to track, or at least in terms of like the results, right? How you
Yeah.
capture revenue there. So it's just like there has to be a little bit of the love of the game or some reason when the chips are down to keep going.
Yeah, you mentioned COVID.
Yeah.
How many people bought a pet? During COVID, like it's a
or
thing
or
to
a,
do.
or a
It's what we're
color
doing.
or a neon podcast mic and be
Or
like, I'm a
yeah, whatever it
podcaster,
is. It's like
right?
I got time on my hands and I got to do something.
Yeah,
Well, eventually, you're dealing with a sick animal
yeah,
or an elderly animal.
yeah,
So I mean, similarly, think about with everything in life. When you begin, think about the end,
yeah.
and are you okay with the end? Because if you're not, don't begin it.
It sounds like someone that's been as successful as a recruiter as well, right? If you can't, don't work on unfillable roles. Kind of what that has me thinking in terms of industry related. But you've done 1,500 episodes. You're always on top of kind of the pulse of the market, the industry. We know what topics been dominating. Obviously, the AI the last couple of years. But what
A1, yeah.
A1, excuse me. What has you like fired up right now? Could be AI related, could be not AI or A1 steak sauce related. About recruiting and TA and HR right now.
Yeah, I mean, no one would trust me if I said anything other than AI,
Yeah,
automation, et cetera. I mean, look, the smartest, most well-funded companies on the planet, the ones that we know and love, the Googles, the Metas, et cetera, they've all kind of been convinced themselves that they can do a lot more with a lot fewer people. And we're starting to see that sort of trickle down to, I guess, tier two companies, the Exxons of the world, the Pfizers of the world. And we're also seeing sort of knee-jerk reactions to maybe that was a bad idea to lay everybody off. So what's most interesting on the show is that tug of war, I guess, of are the machines going to win? Are the people going to win? Is it going to be somewhere in between? And that battle is being waged right now, and it's happening not only with big companies but in our space as well. So you look at an Indeed that just had their future works event, which is where they bring all their clients in and look how cool we are. Clearly, they are with Talent Scout and talent. Like they are working toward machines interviewing machines and machines talking to machines until there's a certain point where there has to be a human involved. And to me, that's a battle that goes back to, right, the trains versus like Paul Bunyan. And so what's past is present and future. We're talking about it in a different way, but that obviously is the conversation that we have. And who's going to own that space? Obviously, you have huge companies with big pockets that are doing Geminis and Chat GPTs, et cetera. And then you have like, what's Workday going to do? What's SAP going to do? Well, okay, I'm going to go buy Smart Recruiters and I'm going to go buy Paradox. I'm going to add these pieces. So where do people land as a consumer with this stuff? You talk to a lot of recruiters like, well, how do you use AI? Like, well, I plug in my job postings on Chat GPT. I put in, on Gemini, ask questions. So like, can vendors be a part of that or not? And that is a thing. We're seeing a lot fewer startups in the space. However, you're seeing with vibe coding and solutions like Lovable, where anyone can be a developer. Like, are we going to see more little guys kind of fit certain niches? So, like I said, there's never a shortage of things to talk about, but that issue in and of itself is a big issue, and it's spilling down into other things that we'll be talking about in all levels of the jungle, right? You have the lions and you have the meerkats, and they're all kind of interesting in their own way.
Absolutely.
And we'll be talking about all of them on the show, I'm sure.
I I I like it. I love it. I think you brought up a point that in recording this series and just even outside of this, people are talking about the human AI, that the overlap there, right? Where does the human take over, the AI take over everything else? But you mentioned something interesting about not as many startups or the traditional startups in the sense that we're looking, but like a lot of the smaller business, the people kind of just a side hustle that turns into a full business almost overnight because of what these tools are allowing people to do. And I said that with content. I'm sure you've seen it with the podcast and just content marketing.
Mm-hmm.
One or two people can have the reach of 20, 30, 50, 100 now with
Sure.
kind of the digital reach and some of the tools. I don't know. It's just an interesting observation because that's what I'm seeing too. People turning into a side hustle to a full time hustle quicker,
Yeah.
maybe not even needing the funding and kind of maybe more bootstrapped type stuff. I don't know. I'm interested to see how that kind of shakes out, but it seems like you've kind of seen it. Where do you think the opportunity is there for people in our industry?
Yeah, I think there are two things that you mentioned that are really interesting to me. Number one is the democratization of coding. Not that long ago, to get a website or to build an app, you had to go. If you were really bootstrapping it, you go to Upwork or get a co-founder that knew how to code, and then you bring in the idea and get kind of energy around it. I mean, where we're going is a world where anyone with a basic idea can plug in natural language, like how humans talk to each other, and create an application for that. Now, in a world where everyone can build whatever, if I can just plug in any website and say, clone this for me, then it's like brand and trust is incredibly important in your network and network effects. So whereas a young person might be able to build an app really easily, they don't have the trust, the brand, the network. So building that is a challenge. And if there's more noise, that becomes really hard to be the signal in that. So do bigger companies make more apps? Like, in other words, place more chips on the board to see like what will hit, and what does hit we'll spend more time and energy on. So I do think you're going to see a lot more. There'll be a lot more copycatting, copying catting, or whatever. You'll see more copycats. You'll see a lot of things that don't need money, frankly, and the 2 million seed rounds are fewer and far between today. Now, how that impacts the investment world, I think, is really going to be interesting as well. But you're going to see a lot of products, but a lot of people are like, "What's what?" They didn't get any money. They could be some Joey bag of donuts in their basement. Who knows? So, trust is going to be a big thing, which leads me to the other thing that you mentioned that I think is really interesting: is how do we market stuff and how do we generate trust? Because in a world where no one clicks on a Google link, what good is SEO? what good is Google, right? Like if Google is just type in a question and Gemini gives you an answer and I don't have to click on anything, well, marketing used to be let's make a lot of content and we'll be searchable and people will click on us and they'll see that Google has given us a thumbs up and we're good to go. Well, that world is gone, or at least going away. And in a world where anyone can buy Instagram ads or put whatever you want on TikTok, it's like, what do I trust? So I really think if you're watching the influencer space, I think that is a growing demand for companies. We're seeing it on the podcast for sure. When people come to us, it's not to sponsor the show. It's not about we're Joe Rogan and we're going to get you 100 million downloads. It's about we're gonna put a level of trust in that we know you and the product, and we're going to ally with you or partner with you in many aspects. So when people hear an ad on our show, we like to think that it's the quality and the trust that people have in our show that we're not going to get back but we're not going to get behind any kind of like scam or something that people can't trust. So we're seeing companies like Flockity, and I think you're going to see more and more of these sort of influencer products where a company can say, I want to buy the HR influencer package, and what does that look like and what do they say and what platforms are they on? Because like podcasting is established. That's why if anyone says I'm starting a podcast, I'm like, why? Go get a TikTok account. Like, start doing that. That's like a much shorter bridge for you to go across. But being an influencer, I think, is going to be a huge thing in the future. And building that network and that trust is going to be really important to companies that are making so many apps, so easily in the new brave new world.
That is the reach, right? I think we're moving away from appeals to authority. I think is kind of what I've been kind of seeing of like, I can trust it because this brand says so, this big name, like big company said so, and it really
Mm-hmm.
is more like the to the individual and kind of people, say like your vibe attracts your tribe type of thing, and that's where people
Mm-hmm.
are getting that comfort level there, and I think that is the people that protect their brand, that know that there is a brand, right, to protect a
Yeah.
reputation, that you're not just shilling any products or whatever, but there's actual reasons you've probably used it, or you can vouch for the owners or the team or whatever, right? That reputation is huge, and that authenticity. I think people are just getting better at weeding out
Yeah.
the BS a little bit more. At least that's what I've seen. And if you can kind of just find a way to just be authentic day in and day out, and to your point of the podcast, I posted on LinkedIn for a couple of years before I even did a podcast, and it was just to
Uh-huh.
give people that were reading my post another way to interact with my content, just to hear me versus read it. And it added, it complemented everything else that we were doing. But
Mm-hmm.
I never set out. That was my why. Was I wanted potential prospects to hear, not just like read, and so they could kind of like, this is someone that I could be coached from, or anything else. Like, I
Yeah.
could stand their voice and listen to them for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or this person sucks. I hate Clark. I'm like deleting it. I'm going to unfollow him forever, and that's totally fine too, because right there's no, that's completely your choice. And I think
Yeah.
if just owning that on my end, just giving them the opportunity and the choice to engage or not engaged, I think that makes it. It just removed all the stress and pressure for me to like be a certain way. And it's like, this is just what I'm seeing. I'm posting it, and it seems like that's what you guys have been doing for 8 years as
Yeah.
well.
If
To
you
look
like it, great. If not, that's okay too.
exactly,
And we're going to track the people that are that
yeah,
are vibing with us, that
yeah,
dig what we're saying and are picking up what we're dropping. It's interesting. I want to be on stage at ERE with Jeff Taylor,
yep,
who famously founded Monster. Now, some of your listeners are too young to remember this, but what did Monster do when it came out, right? Like sexy, fun imaging, Super Bowl ad. They had a blimp at Red Sox games. Like, it was a very traditional marketing strategy that Monster implemented. And now Jeff Taylor, 25, 30 years later, he's on stage with a podcaster at ERE,
yeah,
right? So like the mindset from when he started that startup to now, like you would never raise a ton of money, put Super Bowl ads on, get
yeah.
a blimp, whatever, have a high paid spokesperson. Like that's how things have kind of changed, and I think it's really appropriate that Jeff is on stage with me to kind of illustrate the world and how it's changed from when Monster started a world now which Monster isn't, a thing anymore. Like they weren't able to adapt, and adapting is incredibly important on many aspects.
Well, and he's got and I recorded with him, and it was an awesome conversation. I can't wait for the fireside chat with the both of you at
Yeah.
ERE, because it's just the way you guys both think. It's adaptable to whatever the landscape evolves to. And I think
Uh-huh.
that's what's interesting is like 30 years ago, it's different. He knows it's a different landscape. So how do I
Mm-hmm.
approach it? Right. And I know he talked about starting a social media for baby boomers, and, Facebook kind of ate his lunch, but he's always thinking in terms of like, what is the market going to respond to? Not what, and what's kind of next in innovation. And he's not so rigid in his ways. It reminds me of like
Yeah.
the agency owners that are like, I made cold calls, you got to make cold calls, or I made this much when I started, you got to make this much now when I started. But you guys both recognize the evolving landscape, and it's like that mentality. And I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
there's being born with it, there's developing it. Like that's what's interesting to me when I hear and talk about people like you, leaders in the space, like the both of you. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you kind of think of like what's next from what you're seeing now. Is that developed? Is that learned? Is that innate? Like where does that like come from?
Well, I can definitely say that him in particular has an example of how Monster was impacted. Let's go back 20 years and the launching of Indeed.
Yeah.
He saw firsthand, we're this big monolithic company with Super Bowl ads and like big marketing budgets. And here's this little shit search engine for jobs that is getting found on Google. Google didn't even exist when Monster started. So Jeff Taylor in particular saw the big media traditional and then the SEO Google thing. And over time, how Indeed was able to leverage. And again, this kind of goes back to trust, right? Do you trust Super Bowl ads, or do you trust what Google says are the best results for
Yeah.
Toledo jobs? And so Indeed started gaining, trust and traction. And so at least I can say in Jeff's case, I think he saw it firsthand. I think another example that's relevant is Paradox recently got acquired by Workday. Well, the founder of Paradox, a guy named Aaron Matos, who a lot of your listeners might know, started a company in the early 2000s, maybe even 99, called Jobbing, which was a traditional job board. Well, in that journey of we want to be a Monster competitor, we want to be Monster for the local markets, they also got kicked in the teeth a few times from whether it was Google or 2008's economy or whatever. And so from the fire of that, Paradox was born, I think, from a lot of the lessons that were learned for Aaron and the jobbing team to come out of that with a Paradox. A lot of the companies in our space just shrivel up and die, or sell and go on to do something else. So I don't have an answer. I'm not
Yeah.
a therapist
Yeah.
of how that happens, but I can tell you there are historical evidence that people that have started stuff failed, got back off their ass, and started something new. In Aaron's case, it was a huge success. In Jeff's case, it's let's see
Yeah.
what's going to happen.
Well, I think that is the answer, right? You just keep going. You have that
Yeah.
resiliency, and there is a little bit of I would say the love of the game, but love of the challenge, right? You just keep going, and it's just you look at it as I guess, kind of look at you do gamify it a little bit, and look at business as a game or a video game or whatever else, and not so serious and rigid, but just it's like you have to kind of get your stuff done every single day, but
Mm-hmm.
there's always an opportunity out there. I think that's kind of like number one, whether it's podcast or a job board, or whatever else it looks like, a building an agency. Like there's always, like, it can be done. It's just like, how can it work for you? I mean, people tell me, oh, content doesn't work, or automation doesn't work. Well, it works. Maybe it hasn't worked for you yet, right? Or maybe you don't even know how to look at, evaluate what does work. Like you don't even know how to evaluate, is it working or not, right? I think there's you can kind of change that mindset. It opens up a lot of avenues and opportunities versus kind of just being more closed minded. So
People are still running radio spots
yeah.
and putting new ads in the newspaper. So
Yes.
yeah, and sometimes people like direct mail. Direct mail is great because nobody does it anymore.
Yeah,
Like you can cut through the clutter with something like direct mail. So yeah,
exactly.
there are opportunities to go back to the tried and true and maybe do it differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's less exciting than the new stuff that's going on.
Exactly. Well, what are you most looking forward to at ERE? kind of like being being at the event and all that. You guys do a ton of events just in general. What are you looking forward to specifically about ERE?
It always goes back to me, and it has for a long time in this industry. As much as I talk about new tech, as much as I talk about startups and the business side of things, like it's always about the people
Yeah,
and the relationships. When I see someone that I see at conferences that I've known for a decade or plus, the conversation isn't what do you think about the new whiz bang software. It's how are the kids, or how is that the concert, because we're all kind of connected on other platforms.
yeah,
But I've grown into a lot of relationships in the industry, and to me it's always the people. And ERE is a special case for me, because I really came up when I was doing Cheesehead and the blog, really came up with a lot of other people in that space, or in that sort of content creation, early influencer environment. And ERE really embraced that. And I remember, the blogging zone, or the blogging whatever, donuts and coffee,
yeah.
and a lot of those people that I made friends with in 2006 are still jamming. So there's a lot to talk about and a lot to catch up with people that I see, and it's particularly interesting with ERE, also adapting, right? Also
Yeah.
learning, also seeing other people do it differently, and how should we, turn inward and look in the mirror, and how do we change things? And so to be 20 years on, and go to another ERE and see how it's different, how it's the same, is intriguing. But again, at the end of the day, it's like, who am I going to have a scotch with at the bar?
Yeah.
And who am I going to see that I haven't seen in a while? It really is all about the people. And for some reason, this space, it's like the mob. People they try to leave, and they either come back, or they're just resolved to, like, this is it. Like Jeff Taylor, right? Jeff Taylor was Monster, and then he did Eons, and then he worked for Ray Dalio for a long
Yeah.
time, and he's back, baby.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun that people do. It's kind of boomerang in this space, and when that happens, it's fun to catch up and create new stories and
I
hear new anecdotes.
I it's yeah, that's awesome. I relate with it. I left Aerotech back end of 2017. I thought I would never be in recruiting ever again, never do anything. And now here we are, have digital recruiter going to ERE. We're doing this, right? And it's interesting how it works. It is a little bit just when I thought he got away, they pulled me back in. And
Mm-hmm.
then you just embrace it, and then you just own it, and things work out. So
Yep.
I think we're sometimes born to be in this industry, but we just don't realize it. We kind of get thrown into it. So no, it'll be super cool. I know that fireside chat, I think, is the end of day 4:45 on end of day one, excuse me,
Yep.
PST, so 7:45 EST. And if you haven't gotten your ticket, come on. It's San Diego in November, so like, why not make it
It
happen?
doesn't suck.
It
It
doesn't
doesn't
suck.
suck.
If not, get a virtual ticket. We'll have to talk about the Buckeyes, because I do live in Columbus, and so I've had to adopt them a little bit, and been all right with that. So hopefully they're still undefeated by then. And other than that, any last kind of tips, wisdom, thoughts before we wrap it up?
I'll take that bet on Ohio State being undefeated when
Yeah.
we see each other. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, no, look, if you like what you heard here, if you're not already, tune in to Chad and Cheese on whatever favorite podcast platform. And if you're old school, you can just go to chadcheese.com and find out more there. Otherwise, Clark, the dog wet on the picnic basket. That's all I got.
I like it. I got to really think about what that means, because I haven't heard that one before. But I'll do that after we wrap up. And
It
again,
is it is a 1984
yeah.
National Lampoon's Vacation Clark Griswold reference. I'm sure you've heard a Clark
Oh, I know.
Griswold reference
I
in
don't
your
know how
life.
I
So
forget the line in the movie. So, oh yeah, I get Clark Griswold all the time. So yeah, for familiar. So shame on me. But anyways,
That's
well,
okay. I'm really old, Clark. It's okay. I pull out some real
I,
old ones out of my
I
ass.
respect it. We threw out the anchor man, but that was a couple years before that.
Way too
But
new.
way too new.
Way too new.
That's
If it's
true.
21st century,
Too
take
new.
me back to
Uh,
the 80s.
as someone that has their 20-year high school reunion this year, it making me feel a little bit better about that. So I appreciate it. But again, check out
Well, I do what
the
I can.
Chad and Cheese podcast. As I said, Spotify, Apple. I downloaded everything on Spotify. So check out the podcast. Joel, appreciate you being here. Looking forward to meeting you at ERE officially. And until then, happy hunting, y'all.
We